On the program, 7 deaths of Chicago teenagers poisoned with Tylenol, a nationwide wave of terror, a ransom demand and a suspect who regrets years of harassment for this crime. Welcome to the Tylenol murderers. On 29 September 1982, 12 years old Mary Kellerman woke up with a sore throat. She lived in Elk Grove City, Illinois, and her parents gave her a capsule of Tylenol, a brand of acetaminophen widely used in the United States, which is the equivalent of our paracetamol in Europe. A few moments later, her father heard her coughing again and again, until he heard a thud. When he opened the bathroom door, he found his daughter on the floor, eyes open, pupils dilated and with great difficulty in breathing. A few hours later, Mary died. On the same day as Mary, a young man of 27, Adam Janus, woke up with one of the physical ailments. Before starting his rounds, the 27-year-old postman went to a supermarket, bought a bottle of Tylenol and took 2 pills. A few hours later, he was taken to hospital but died shortly afterwards. As one of his nieces recalls,
"My family were told that he died of a heart attack, but nobody understood why he died so young."
To make matters worse, the next day, during the funeral, Adam's brother Stanley and his wife Teresa, both newlyweds, began to suffer severe headaches. They went into the house, found a bottle of painkillers and took a few capsules. Adam's brother died almost immediately. His partner died 2 days later. The police found only one thing in common between all the victims. They had all taken Tylenol before they died. All it took was for an impulsive prosecutor at one of the crime scenes to drop a handful of capsules in his hand and smell them to discover the bitter almond aroma of cyanide. The investigation revealed that someone had injected the poison into a number of bottles and placed them on the shelves of several randomly selected chemists. Incredible as it may seem, when investigators discovered that someone had put cyanide in the capsules, consumers were warned not to take any more. In fact, the manufacturer Johnson & Johnson recalled more than 31 million boxes in the United States. The company has cooperated with investigators and has offered a $100,000 reward for information leading to the identification and prosecution of those responsible. The pharmaceutical company eventually checked 1.5 million bottles and found 3 unopened containers contaminated with cyanide, a total of 10 bottles of tempered pills. Another interesting fact is that the investigation, which involved more than 100 agents, resulted in a 20,000 pages report, even though there was no crime scene and no motive. I'll let you read this encyclopedia and summarize what you have learned from it in the comments. In case you didn't know, cyanide is a poison that blocks the body's ability to use oxygen, according to the US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. It is a substance that particularly affects the heart and brain. Its effect is very rapid, there is no question about it, said Dr. Edmund Donog, who worked on the case as Deputy Medical Examiner for Cook County. In its solid crystal form, cyanide can be fatal to humans in quantities well below 1 gram, although some people have survived after ingesting more. It should be remembered that the smell, more specifically a bitter almond smell, given off by the bottle of pills helps to reveal that cyanide was the cause of the murders. If you are interested in this opinion of a forensic scientist, I invite you to watch Legend's very interesting video with Philip Boxer. That year, the US Food and Drug Administration, FDA, published its first regulations on tamper-evident packaging for over-the-counter medicines. Johnson & Johnson unveiled plans to triple-seal bottles of Tylenol, a box with glued flaps, a plastic ring around the neck of the container and an aluminum seal, now common for OTC medicines. The company then offered solid capsules instead of the powder-filled capsules that had been tampered with cyanide. In 1983, Congress also passed a law making it a crime to tamper with drugs and other consumer products. FDA packaging requirements for over-the-counter medicines require manufacturers to indicate on the label how you can tell if someone has opened the bottle before you. These tamper-evident features can include the use of logos, breakable seals, blister packs, or tape. Although it may seem like the end of the world, 1982 did not mark the end of drug falsification. Several copycats followed, including a case of cyanide-tainted Tylenol that claimed the victim in New York in 1986. The same goes for a woman who added cyanide to Excedrin, killing her husband and a stranger in 1986, and for a Seattle man who put cyanide in Sudafed to kill his wife in 1991, but killed two strangers instead, so the practice has become commonplace. The authorities never identified the killer as such. However, in the midst of the national panic at the time, Johnson & Johnson received a letter demanding $1 million to stop the murder. It was at this point that the alleged killer made himself known incognito. The letter in question read,
"As you can see, it's easy to put cyanide, potassium and sodium in the capsules you find on shop shelves."
James W. Lewis, later found to be the author of the letter, was suspected of the murders for more than 40 years. Although he was never charged, he was arrested in New York in 1982 and convicted of attempting to extort money from Johnson & Johnson, for which he spent more than 12 years in prison. After his release, he and his wife moved to Massachusetts in 1995. When Lewis was arrested in New York in 1982 after a nationwide manhunt, he gave investigators a detailed account of how the killer might have operated. Lewis later admitted sending the letter and demanding the money, but said he never intended to cash it. He said he wanted to embarrass his wife's former employer by having the money wired to his account. The case was thrown out when, in a 1992 interview with the Associated Press, Lewis said that he had not confessed the police but had simply explained how the killer had been able to poison the Tylenol.
"I did what I would have done for a corporate client, i.e., draw up a list of possible scenarios."
Lewis, who was at previous run-ins with the law, has always denied playing any role in the Tylenol deaths. But he has remained a suspect and in 2010 handed over DNA samples for the FBI. He has even set up a website claiming to have been framed, although the couple lived briefly in Chicago in the early 1980s. Lewis said he was in New York at the time of the poisoning. The FBI seized a computer and other items from Lewis' home in February 2009, after Illinois authorities resumed their investigation. At the time, the FBI's Chicago office cited advances in forensic technology and said it was working with the Illinois State Police and local law enforcement to conduct a thorough review of all evidence collected in connection with the murderers. This allowed the investigators, for example, to determine the postmark date of the ransom note Lewis had written, demanding that $1 million be wired into a bank account. The new timeline suggests that Lewis wrote the letter before the public knew that the deaths were linked to contaminated Tylenol pills. But then, wouldn't that make him absolutely culpable for the deaths? There simply wasn't enough evidence to charge him. Lewis had a previous run-in with the law in 1978, when he was charged in Kansas City, Missouri, with the dismembered murder of 72-year-old Raymond West, who had hired him as a bookkeeper. The charges were dropped because the case of West's deaths could not be determined and some evidence had been obtained illegally. He was convicted of 6 counts of mail fraud in connection with a credit card scheme in Kansas City in 1981, where he was accused of using the name and background of a former IRS client to obtain 13 credit cards. In 1983, police described Lewis as a chameleon who lived in several states, used at least 20 aliases, and had numerous jobs, including computer technician, tax accountant, importer of Indian tapestries, and seller of jewelry, pharmaceutical machinery, and property. In 2004, he was also charged with rape, abduction and other offences for the alleged assault of a woman in Cambridge. He was jailed for 3 years awaiting trial, but prosecutors dropped the charges on the day his trial was due to begin after the victim refused to testify, the Middlesex County Prosecutor's Office said at the time. After more than 40 years of multiple murderers, Lewis died at the age of 76 on Sunday 9 July 2023. Police, fire and ambulance crews responding to a report of an unconscious person at around 4 p.m. found him dead at his home in Cambridge, Massachusetts, according to a press release.
After investigation, it was determined that Lewis's death was not suspicious.
As far as I'm concerned, the suspect has everything it takes to be the perfect culprit. He has a very full past, but what prevents us from incarcerating him is the lack of evidence and motive. In your opinion, innocent or lucky guilty? I hope you enjoyed this video. In any case, see you on the next Friday on this same channel, and until now, have a good time. See you, bye bye.